Thank you very much for joining, folks. My name is Pradheepan Manohara. I'm actually part of the Accenture Cloud Security Practice, and I would like to welcome you all to the Governance, Compliance, and Risk panel. I would also like to quickly introduce Maggie as well as Mayuran. And Maggie, if you want to take a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself and pass it on to Mayuran, and then we'll move forward from there, right?
Hi, everyone, and nice being part of this panel. Looking forward to the discussion. My name is Maggie Calle. I work in the financial industry and the insurance industry for over 20 years. I've been working on mostly developing security solutions and risk programs to basically to solve all the complexity issues and the security issues that we have in the financial sector. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Hello, everyone. Extremely excited to be part of this panel. My name is Mayuran Kanthasamy. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Varicent. I've been in the security field for over 17 years with experience spanning across a variety of industries, including consulting, marketing, retail. My last 5 years of that experience has come from the SaaS industry, which includes my previous role where I led the information security function for an international retail analytics firm that offers SaaS-based products and services via multi-cloud deployments.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mayuran. I appreciate that. So let's just dive deep into this panel, right? So in this panel, what we want to do is we want to focus on the evolution of what GRC has been, right? There used to be a time where we started off with just on-prem and then we moved into cloud. There were multiple other factors which kicked in, right? So on that topic, right? So let's quickly touch upon the evolution of GRCs from where it is and where it is today, and where is it actually going to go into, right? So Maggie, to you, do you have any views on this? And
so I think everyone who has been in security for a while has kind of witnessed the changes that we have seen in terms of governance, compliance, and the way we do security, especially the comparison aspects when we go from on-prem to on-cloud. Organizations have recently embraced a lot of the capabilities in the cloud for their digital transformation journeys. And to increase the velocity, everything is about velocity and how fast we can deliver value to our clients and to our organization so they can deliver to their clients. However, this introduces a lot of complexities for the security folks or people who are in governance, because there isn't overarching governance frameworks that really allow us to have a lot of visibility into these cloud environments. A lot of the business units started to just go and procure cloud services by themselves without involving IT or security. So chances of procurement. So chances are that there wasn't any security guardrails that were being instituted. So that's why one of the reasons why governance, cloud governance, becomes a very important aspect in trying to manage these situations. And because of these complexities, we have to obviously, and we have seen the cloud governance mature and evolve to the extent that our governance frameworks are a necessity, where we need governance tools, we need lots of automation processes because things are changing very quickly in the cloud. And we need obviously a team and experts who can materialize an operational model that works for the cloud. Additionally, I think a lot of people probably work in environments where you have a cloud center of excellence, right? Those are typically the operational models that we have constructed in order to deal with and focus with the major things that need to be governed in cloud. One of them, obviously, and that's close to the work that I do, is security and compliance. But the other folks want to govern the financial aspects of the cloud, cost control, performance management, right? So when it comes to security and compliance, from the security team's point of view, we want to make sure that whether the cloud center of excellence is within the security team or outside the security team, we want to make sure that we partner so that we can have visibility into the cloud and asset discovery, configurations, any changes that are happening in real time. We want to have proper governance to enforce the guardrails. If anything goes out of whack, we want to immediately auto-enforce it, put it back to the baseline. And obviously, we have a desire to make sure that we're compliant with regulations, with the residency requirements and frameworks, right? So if we are a PCI organization, we want to make sure that we comply with PCI requirements, but all of this needs to be automated. You can't do this manually, right? So these are kind of like the main things and how I've seen the evolution of cloud going from on-prem, where on-prem really there was the configuration management and drift management was a very little tiny part of the security program. And when we go to cloud, it's that's basically the guts of the whole operation.
Yeah. So Myron, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I know Maggie covered it up and summed it up a little bit, but then I just want to hear your view and what your points are, right, on this, on the evolution of governance in the cloud, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, whatever Maggie mentioned, that's the reality of how things are happening. You know, preliminary efforts on the governance side, you know, mainly as an organization, if you're looking to move to the cloud, you know, you're trying to understand and focusing just on the security aspects. We know governance is more than just security. You know, there's a cost factor involved as well, but you know, understanding risk based on what data is to be processed, you know, understanding the type of classification, the appetite of the risk of the organization, you know, how do you monitor and correct any of those violations in the cloud? But I think one of the key areas for organizations to pay close attention to is, you know, knowing where your data protection, what your data protection and data residency requirements are. You know, you're no longer within the boundaries of your data center anymore. You know, you can spin up servers anywhere around the world. You want to make sure you know in which countries your data is being processed, you know, what laws apply to them, what impact they will have, and then obviously follow that up with a risk-based approach to comply with them. That's one. And when you actually think about it, security in the cloud is no different to on-prem. The fundamental requirements of security in the cloud has not changed. So you look at IAM, for example, you know, if you're using service accounts, to run your services and, you know, run backups and things like that, don't use, I mean, follow the same thing in the cloud. Do not use an employee user account to do that. So, you know, there are IAM components, there's encryption. Follow it up. There's vulnerability management, there's logging and monitoring. There are some key areas of security where no matter where you are, whether you're in the cloud or on-prem, they would apply. So I think that's key. And I think the key thing is for organizations to understand their rules and regulations on how they want to operate in the cloud. And, you know, standards and frameworks are a great starting point to help organizations on that journey.
Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't disagree on those points, right? So just moving into that next segue, right? I mean, one of the key aspects is what we have noticed through our experience in the industry. And when I say our experience in the industry, we looked at every industry. It's not specific to banking or to financial sectors or to government. It's across every board. When cloud initially popped in, everybody just jumped on the bandwagon. Everybody wanted a piece of cloud, and everybody wanted to establish like, hey, you know what, I'm in cloud. That was the most important aspect. Everybody wanted to communicate to the world, right? But what they really didn't understand is the change aspect which happens within the organization. When I say that, people didn't look at establishing CCOE boards. People didn't look at establishing TOM, which includes people, process, and technology, right? And governance sit right on top of that, and compliance sit on top of that, and everything is risk-based, which sits on top of that, right? What is your view on this? Like, I mean, how has organizations evolved, especially large to small organizations, mid-sized organizations? How have they evolved? Have they started realizing the importance of a target operating model and governance and risk aspect towards it and working towards it, right? You know, what's your view on that, Maggie and Mayuran, right? So.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, like you said, a lot of organizations kind of jumped into the cloud. Cloud governance kind of was put perhaps as an afterthought, and a lot of tooling came available as well, right? Which really helps. But I think the right steps for anybody starting a journey in the cloud should be to really consider the implications of cloud governance and even the cost, right? Because there's a lot of automations. That target operating model requires the help of tooling so that compliance can be done, governance can be done in an automated fashion. It will be impossible to do it manually. So in order to do that, any organization on the starting the journey or who've already started the journey and don't have a proper governance for the cloud, they need to pick a compliance framework. There is many out there, but ISO 27017 is one of them. The CSA Cloud Control Matrix is another one, and then the automations need to happen to conform to those controls, and then perform control testing as well on a regular basis, if not real time, to make sure that we are compliant at any moment in time. The continuous, that's really also fits in with the continuous monitoring and automation. There is lots of tools out there that allow us to now just buy and integrate, right? Like people shouldn't be really looking into doing this manually or kind of in-house. There is commercial tooling that allows you to do this type of governance and automation as well. I think one of the aspects that is missing sometimes nowadays, that we have a lot of the CI and CD, the DevSecOps pipeline. There is a lot of code that goes along, in the to automate, but the secure processes that go along with the SDLC are probably not there. There isn't too many people really nowadays in the industry that are doing secure testing for the code that is used for automation, right? Infrastructure as a code. So those aspects need to now, we need to be very cognizant that we need to have secure code. It doesn't matter whether we're coding for in applications that used to be implemented on prem, but also this automation scripting that is happening needs to follow and conform to secure SDLC. So those are kind of the aspects. Other aspects that I have seen for a good target operating model is really the security team working, and the cloud security team working very closely with legal, privacy, procurement to develop processes, to develop boilerplate security clauses for residency, for termination, exit with the cloud, for many aspects that need to be taken care of contractually. And also to understand the regulatory and legal constraints so that we make them known to the cloud provider so that we conform with our legal and regulatory obligations. So the organizations that have Cloud Center of Excellence will always really kind of rely on the Cloud Center of Excellence to kind of work and be the center of these activities, working with the security team, with the architecture team, and also working out with the legal and compliance team. So they're basically the ones that set all the processes, and as well as the operational aspects of the cloud, the baselines, and the automation of the guardrails and so on. One aspect as well, once you're established and you have your set of your catalog of services that you are deemed to be secure and that you have risk assessed, right? Then you want to have the ability for people who want to procure new cloud services to have an easy process that they just come in to maybe the Cloud Center of Excellence. And the Cloud Center of Excellence assembles the entire team, whether it's legal, security, compliance, to come in and assess the new service and then publish it in the catalog of services that is going to be available for the business units or the organization to use. So when you kind of make these services easy to consume, and you also make the services, any new services onboarding easy to onboard, then the business units, you kind of give them a value, and they're not gonna go and try to procure it themselves and kind of, create shadow IT and those things that happen, should you not have these appropriate governance processes in place.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, Maggie, there's going to be a lot of initial upfront work which needs to happen to build that CCOE, to build the target operating model, and also to build alignment amongst various business stakeholders to ensure there's
Absolutely.
consistency and you build the governance, right? And I think change management, which is one of those things which gets not looked into very often, is also a key factor in this aspect, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mayuran, what are your thoughts on this? What's your view on this, right?
I think I'm just going to build on what Maggie has mentioned here. I mean, for me, I think, as Maggie mentioned, that catalog of approved services, that has been a big game changer, at least based on my experience. Having that list of approved cloud services that can be used, that's going to, it provides the teams the freedom to create things the way they want with those guardrails and the boundaries that are set for them. And that anything that they use can be trusted because you've already done your due diligence on that. They've been approved and those services are allowed. So, I mean, it's great to have something like that, because I think that ties into one of our whole governance topic where, having this list of this catalog of services actually helps you with speed and agility while keeping it secure, which is, I think, three of the most important concepts when you're trying to build on that governance. You've got your security in there, you've got speed, and you're giving them the agility as well, the organization, the agility to build. So I think that's great. But I'd also like to touch on kind of, this concept of the shared security responsibility model that, organizations face when they move into the cloud. Essentially what it is, it means that your security team or your internal organization's IT and operations team maintains some of the responsibilities for security as you move applications and workloads to the cloud, while the provider or the cloud service provider still keeps some of that responsibility, not all of them. So, one of the keys to kind of understanding and establishing your cloud target operating model is understanding where your provider's responsibilities end and where yours begin. One should always keep in mind that these responsibilities can also change based on the type of services you consume in the cloud itself. So, if you're using an infrastructure as a service versus a platform as a service, typically you'd see those responsibilities kind of shift up and down. So I think that's another key area as well, when you're actually establishing your operating model there in the cloud. Keeping those things in check would be a great way moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, Maggie, you were saying something, and I.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I didn't mention anything about the shared responsibility model, but that is absolutely key. One of the aspects that we have to work with legal to make sure that is actually stated in the contract.
Yeah, agreed, 100%, right? So this brings us into a very interesting aspects. Maggie, you touched upon this, and Mayuran, you touched upon this, right? Establishing cloud governance is no easy feat. There's multiple policies. We've moved away from is somebody doing the right aspect to configuration and misconfiguration management, right? So managing those configurations, which could have there could be 100+ configurations which needs to be set up in the cloud to ensure there's a clear security and control baselines which has been established. On top of that, those control baselines actually governed, and the risk which comes out of it is actually mitigated. And on top of that, you're also compliant with NIST, or you're compliant with ITSG 33 if you're a government body, or whatever other regulatory requirements out there, right? So automation has been a key factor, right? I mean, the cloud security posture management is a hot topic in the industry today. Everybody wants to automate, how their posture is being looked at and reviewed. They want to have eyes on it, right? What are your views on governance, compliance, and automation? What are your thought processes on that, right? And I know you touched upon infrastructure as a code, DevSecOps a little bit, like Mayuran in this case. What is your thought process?
Yeah, I think Pradeep, perhaps one of the biggest advantages from a security perspective, at least in the cloud, that the cloud has over traditional kind of on-prem data centers is you have more access to automation. Because the cloud is typically API driven, fully programmable, doing anything short of full automation is likely hampering your organization's agility, as I mentioned, your speed, the innovation, and then more importantly, I mean, I think it introduces more risk if you're not automating stuff. And I think this is where we've had these themes crop up in our discussion so far. Having these automated guardrails and tied with automatic remediation, I think is one of the best ways forward in terms of addressing that risk. Policy-driven automation and automatic compliance. I think we've probably, many of us have probably heard of that. that concept. It's, one such example is where organizations have, where they've successfully implemented and rolled out this sort of thing is often on the infrastructure side of the cloud. And again, touching on infrastructure as code, infrastructure as code, it provides all the building blocks to create extremely secure and compliant infrastructure if it's been reviewed and done properly. A classic example, you can use infrastructure as code, for example, S3 bucket provisioning. You use policy-driven automation to ensure that, if a developer or an application team, a member from the application team decides to spin up an S3 bucket, you got to make sure that, it's automatically encrypted, it's not public, it's automatically tagged correctly. You don't want those steps to be done manually every time. All it needs is, one developer, developers are busy, forgetting to turn on encryption or making an S3 bucket public. We've all heard a lot of news where, data breaches have resulted as a result of an S3 bucket that has been made public. This is an area where automation and what I kind of call the automatic remediation, where, if anybody does create a bucket, it automatically gets encrypted. So that security baseline is set. And this way, security teams do not rely, they don't have to rely on their monitoring and alerting tools for misconfiguration. If at all, infrastructure provisioning and changes goes through this automated workflow, it's much easier to enforce compliance as a result, because that if an S3 bucket is there, it's been generated, it's been created, automatically it's going to be tagged, it's going to be made private, and it's going to be encrypted. And you're doing this from the onset. Nobody needs to come back and run a review and look at all the S3 buckets. You're trying to fix it at the point it's been created. And you know what? Cloud providers today provide a comprehensive set of built-in features and capabilities so that it gets even the smallest organizations up and running in a very secure posture. You don't need to be one of those large organizations today spending the big bucks to reduce the risk in the cloud. The cloud has already provided these tools that are ready for you. So I think it's key. Automation and using tooling is for me one of the greatest things. I think it needs to be done by all organizations who are actually moving to the cloud, because it's just going to make life so much easier, not just for your IT operations team and security team, but also your compliance teams, and also giving that advantage and passing the advantage onto your customers to ensure that everything is secure in that environment.
Yeah, I think what's also happening in the industry at this point, just to add to your point there, Mayuran, is like the cloud service providers actually taking note of this, right? I think they have come a long way as well, and you need to give them a pat on the back for what they have done in the recent times, right? They've ramped up the capability. They've immediately recognized that like governance, compliance, and security posture is key for them to be successful in this markets. And if they really need those big players to migrate and sustain and leverage them as their true digital partner, these are foundational aspects which needs to actually happen, right? And they have added those features and capabilities and services to the stream of options which is available for us at this point in time, right? So Maggie, I mean, I know Mayuran touched upon some good points from an automation perspective. I just want to just to get your view on this as well, right? Like what is your thought process there, right?
Yes, so not much more to really, add to what Mayuran had said, but really other than to say that the goal of automation should be to be secure and to be compliant. Sometimes they're not the one and the same thing, but we both need to be secure, and also we need to be compliant with regulations and so on. And so Mayuran, you mentioned a lot of things that we've seen on the S3 buckets and so on. And so the reality is that what we want to do is we want to have the policy, we want to figure out what the requirements are for wherever we are, the organization that we're working for, the locality, right, the residency and so on. So once we figure out the requirements, then we obviously want to have the right people so they can come and the experts and the SMEs. And then we want them to automate these and basically bake and codify all the constraints that we have. Right, and using policies and writing them and testing them and making sure that we're going to be able to at any time pull a report and figure out that whether we're passing our controls or whether we're not, and whether we're compliant with the constraints that we have, or whether we're not. I mean, I have seen sessions for people that are, demonstrating how you can codify every single aspect of the controls that you need to be compliant to, and you can have reports, real time reports. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal of automation, and you want to be able to have alerting, right? Should there be any non-compliances, or should there be any misconfigurations that seem like somebody kind of temper with those configurations, right? Like those are the security incidents that we want to be alerted on, and we want to have kind of self-fixing as well of this, right? If something goes off, like there's a drift, just have automated processes that put it back, right, to the way it should be, and without questions, right?
Yeah, I know in the recent past, the organization which I work for, Accenture, has invested a lot on auto remediation, and we're seeing a lot of uptick on, hey, we need to auto remediate, we don't have time, because the time taken to remediate these issues, even though they're minor, they're intense, and we just need to move away with that, right? And what we're also noticing is the cloud security posture management tools out there, cloud agnostic or cloud centric, are moving towards auto remediation capabilities at this point in time. So it's a very good point there. And that ties nice into the governance aspect to say X number of issues were identified, X number of issues were remediated, you're still in compliant with this specific standard, and here's the risk which was mitigated, right? It's pretty good, right? Now this moves into a really interesting topic. I know we have just a few more minutes on this thing, but I hope we could cover this. Like, one of the hot topics which we are noticing in the industry is that cloud agnostic versus cloud centric capabilities, right? Now, I've spoken to a few industry experts out there, and they've always told me, even if you're a single cloud provider, it's good to build a cloud agnostic architecture, and governance, risk, and compliance is nevertheless the same. So if you're looking to leverage a tool, try to keep it outside so that you have that view and you get that insight, right? So what's your view on this? Like Mayuran, to yourself, and Maggie followed, if you could follow up.
Sure, I think we all acknowledge there are benefits and drawbacks to both approaches. But as you mentioned, personally speaking, for me, I prefer to adopt the cloud agnostic approach as well to tools and services, because I believe there's more benefits in the long run. I think being cloud agnostic promotes portability for one thing, and then helps prevent vendor lock-in. I think that's a big one. It provides a flexibility in accommodating a multi-cloud strategy too that way. You're not always locked into a single cloud service provider's services, where if you decide, 5 years down the line or 3 years down the line that you want to move these services into, say, another cloud service provider, looking at equivalent services that satisfy those requirements, you can do that. But, having a set of agnostic tools, you can easily, port it around. That's one of the big advantages. But typically organizations will decide to select which services or applications would be best suited for which type of architecture. There are some that are best served on the cloud native architecture. For example, encryption. You don't want to use a third-party encryption tool. It's much easier to use what's provided by the cloud service provider. Mm-hmm. There are other services, things like, for example, a web application firewall service. You don't want to stick that service with and try and tie that into the cloud service provider. Having a cloud agnostic web application firewall gives you that portability and freedom to move across and use that same technology across multiple cloud service providers. So for me, it's important to note that it's not one or the other, but in reality, organizations often tend to adopt a form of hybrid approach. But my recommendation would be, as much as possible, try and utilize cloud agnostic tools for the services where you can actually move it across the cloud service providers.
Yeah. I'm going to be short, and you're on mute, Pradeep, but I fully 100% agree with Mayuran, and that we want to remain tool agnostic where we can. And just one comment to add that, with more regulators questioning the resilience of our cloud environment and the concentration risk, because a lot of people are using either Google, Amazon, or Azure, Then we want to probably consider an abstraction layer and being tool agnostic so that we can easily either migrate to other cloud environments, as Mayuran said, or also be able to manage multi-cloud environments, because that is something that the regulators have been hinting, and they want the organizations to not just be fully reliant on one cloud. They want us to use for DR purposes, basically a multi-cloud strategy. So that's how I'll end it.
Good points, but thank you very much, folks. I think we're at the top of the hour. I don't want to take any more of the time, but it was a great discussion. Thank you very much for bringing in all those insights, right? Like hopefully we, like myself, Maggie, and Mayuran, connect with you on a different session, a different time, right? But thank you very much for looking and coming and joining us this session, right? Thank you.